Welcome to the podcast, Leah. We've just had a brief chat before you have jumped on, and I always get really excited of other people who are working in a similar space to me and sharing pain stories and the insights that you've had on your journey. And we've got some pretty big things that you're going to be sharing with us today, your experiences with your family, your own pain story, and the work that you're passionate about doing. So can you start by introducing yourself to us?
Yes, I'm Leah Parsons. I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm the mom of 3 girls, and my oldest daughter died by suicide 8 years ago. And some of my pain story revolves around that whole experience.
And where are you at now? What sort of life do you live now?
Oh, I live a life full of gratitude. I live a life that every day that I wake up, I just am grateful to have another day, and I move through my day of course, pain comes for everybody, but I just embrace whatever comes. I don't push anything away. I don't resist it. So if I have a painful memory, if something's comes up, I'm okay to embrace it. I'm okay to move through it now. But I just know it doesn't have to take me down places that I have to be in, these dark, horrible places for months at a time any longer. Like, I'm not afraid of any emotions.
Mm. So shall we start with the story of your daughter that you're very open about sharing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I had Rehtaeh when I was 29. Before that, I had my own I've had some traumas in my life. I had was sexually molested as a child. I was raped at the age of 14. I spent probably a good 10 years like drinking alcohol, numbing out. I worked in bars and had quite the fast-paced life for a long time. And I was actually coming out of that and into a good place of finding my way again when I became pregnant with Rehtaeh, and she really cemented kind of that journey for me at that time and put me in a place where I wanted to do better and I wanted to go and get an education because I was a high school dropout before that, years before that. And so she was my motivation. She was the reason that I decided to write my high school equivalency exam. I went to university. I earned an undergrad degree in psychology and a master's degree in counseling. And it was just me and her for those 7 years. And she was my driving force. She was my reason for being able to do all of those things. But I also made a promise to her when she was I'd say the first few weeks she was born, that I would have all the conversations with her that nobody had with me to keep her safe. And suddenly I just knew that I needed to have these conversations as raising a female. And so as the years went on and she finished junior high, straight A student, wanted to be a marine biologist, very bright in all the areas, sciences, the arts, it all kind of came easy to her. And as she went into high school, meeting new people, new friends, and different school, she met some friends, and she wanted to have a sleepover at one of their houses. And I spoke to the mom, and she said yes, she could have the sleepover. And that night, alcohol was introduced. There was 4 males there, and Rehtaeh and another female. So they started drinking alcohol, and then suddenly everything I taught her about being safe, about not getting out of a situation, kind of went out the window because she wasn't able to stand up. She wasn't able to do much of anything. And she was raped that night by 4 males. A photo was taken and it was distributed in her community and beyond. So this image started showing up. And of course, she started falling to pieces pretty fast because people started targeting her, saying horrific things to her, males, females. She couldn't show her face. So suddenly she went from this like excited, confident 15-year-old to someone struggling to live every day. And so in the systems, the school system, the mental health system, the police, so we went into all of those systems thinking that we could get the help we needed, and that just wasn't the case. It didn't happen. The case was closed, the photo was still out there, and Rehtaeh kept trying to get back up. She kept going to a new school. She just wanted to kind of work her way through that. She went to therapy, and she just couldn't outrun that photo, and the police weren't taking it serious enough. So she died by suicide in a moment of anger, really. People think it's a moment of sadness, but she was actually doing really well, and something happened that triggered all her pain. It came right to the surface. So she acted in that moment, and she couldn't undo that moment. So she died by suicide, and then my whole life took on a whole different trajectory. And all of a sudden, someone who didn't want to speak in public, even in university, and tried to pick my courses to avoid that, suddenly I was on the front in the media and speaking out and sitting at round tables, sitting with our prime minister, getting laws changed, getting legislation enacted, and part of reviews. And it was just this whole kind of, I just was kind of placed on a different path. And within 6 months, the pain in my body when I got out of bed, I didn't understand what was happening to me. Like, the pain felt like somebody had taken a baseball bat and kind of worked me over. And every morning I'd wake up feeling like that. My legs were dense. I had no energy. My adrenal, my like fatigue from being just high anxiety, and everything was just kind of manifesting and I didn't know what to do. So of course, trying to get up, and I have 2 other daughters to take care of, trying to get up, trying to manage my day to day. It was horrific.
Mm. So, Rehtaeh, does that have a meaning?
Rehtaeh is a name that I'm the youngest of 7 children, and so that means I was an aunt at the age of 10. And my oldest brother had a daughter named Heather. So I was playing with names when I was like 14, and I took Heather and I spelled it backwards. And I said, if I ever have a little girl, I'm going to name her Rehtaeh, and she's going to be my ray of light. I had it all, and her nickname would be Ray. So I had it all kind of planned out long before she ever came.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so how old was Rehtaeh when she suicided?
So Rehtaeh was 17.
Mm-hmm. So like 2 years after.
It was 17 months because she was almost 16 when it happened. So it was 17 months that went on.
Mm. So what was, oh gosh, what is it that you want to share around that experience?
Well,
because what landed you in the media, and what were the things that changed? What are the places that you found yourself, the feelings that you had?
So I was, of course, in complete shock because she talked about having these feelings. So she talked openly about her struggles. But like she told me, I'm never going to act on it because I could never leave and leave my sisters, leave you. But I have these feelings, and so I was shocked. And I stayed in shock for quite a long time. But I had a lot of people holding me up around the world that I could literally feel their energy holding me up. I mean, for 2 years straight, I got gifts in my mail from people I'd never met before. So that was kind of like the power of kindness. I was also attacked for 2 years by the males that raped Rehtaeh and their families. So they came at me and her father pretty hard. Anytime we're in the media, put posters on our street and support the boys. And then there was a court case. So it was just like, I just felt like I was just being placed here and there, like I was living somebody else's life. And moments of reality would kind of burst in from time to time. But the doctors wanted to put me on medications, so I went for I had to go for an assessment, and they said I had complex PTSD from multiple things that happened in my life. So complex PTSD, major depressive disorder, major anxiety disorder. They had the whole list of all the things. And of course, they wanted me on medications and on drugs, and I didn't want to do that. I knew that. I knew that that was not going to be the route that I wanted to take, and that that's not going to help me move in that kind of pain. So I didn't know how I was going to get through it. And I was actually suicidal for a while myself, because I just didn't want to, I didn't see how I could actually go on without her. And at some point, I started listening to a deeper kind of knowing, something deep within me was saying different things like, why don't you try this? Or why don't you go and get some Reiki done? Like and I never had Reiki before. So just little things were kind of popping in. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try that. Maybe you should try yoga. So I actually became a yoga instructor, but I would go and listen to this pull. And so the rest of it was like hell on earth every day. But there was this deeper thing that was kind of pulling me, and I was tapping into it. And it's hard for me to explain what that is, but one day an inner voice kind of said to me as I was kind of spiraling in my thoughts, like, you're not going to make it through this. And that really like got my attention. I'm like, whoa, what? And it was like, unless you kind of step onto a different path, you're just not going to make it. And even though like you've had a lot of stuff in your life that you've gone through, this is going to take you down. And it was like a clear voice kind of saying that to me. And I'm like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like in a place where none of my coping mechanisms were working. So I was collapsing. Like I can remember like reaching in the grocery store for a can of something that I would normally pick up for her, and then just collapsing. Like I can't do this. And so I'm trying so hard to pull together one of those coping mechanisms to kind of be like, I'm strong. I can do this. The tears were just nonstop tears for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a little bit more about Rehtaeh's story? And because you were saying you were in the media and you were changing laws and you were having meetings with the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So, all right, what happened to the boys as well?
So eventually they were charged, because after Rehtaeh died, I got a message from one of them saying like, I didn't rape her. I don't know what the other boys did, but I didn't do it. This is what happened that night. And he kind of filled in all the blanks that she couldn't remember. She could remember bits and pieces. So what he sent to me, you could actually see how that would lay right over what she had told me and the statement she gave the police. So I took that Facebook message to the police, and they were able to reopen the case, even though Rehtaeh wasn't here any longer, reopen the case and charge 2 of the males. So what they did is they charged the person in the photo, because there's a photo of one of the males raping her, and the person taking the photo. So I did have to go to court. So they didn't get, they couldn't get charged with rape because she wasn't even here to testify. So they got charged with making and distributing child pornography. And in the Criminal Code of Canada, which is a pretty big deal to get something changed in the Criminal Code, which is right across the country, is that you're no longer allowed to share intimate images, regardless of age, without the person's permission.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the law that was implemented, because of Rehtaeh. And that was done. And then there was a cyberbullying legislation put in place in our province, because a lot of the abuse, and she was targeted, and nothing could be done about that if it wasn't a death threat. But now it's a little different because of the cyberbullying laws. And so that was implemented too. And there's also like all kinds of changes within police investigations when it comes to sexual assault, when it comes to photos and images. So there's a lot of things that have changed procedurally about how women are being interviewed when it comes to sexual assault, because the woman in charge of her case had never been in with a case of sexual assault before. So that was a whole nother problem that we had with the investigator.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so many things, like, yeah.
How many years ago is this now?
8
8 years ago. And how do you feel towards all these people involved now? I guess maybe this is part of your journey after some of the pain started speaking to you.
Yeah, I just don't feel like that's not part of my journey. It's I feel like everybody has their own journey, and whatever you do in your life, whatever they've done, like I couldn't hold on to the anger. I mean, if I probably sat here and thought about it long enough, I could get angry pretty fast, but uh that's their journey, and they have to kind of whether they, become better people or they don't, that's going to impact their life and their life's journey. So I don't really attach to that any longer.
Yeah. And you have 2 other girls. And did you have a partner, any other support around you in terms of
I
family?
did have a partner at the time. I did have a partner at the time when she died that was very supportive and helped me tremendously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how was it for you when your body started to play up and having to look after your family?
It was so hard because I just felt like I just have to get the kids to school and then I can go home and nap. I
Mm-hmm.
just have to get the kids. And then I was flying to different places to do all these presentations across Canada. Like I was flying to give presentations in schools, at conferences. So there was a lot of aftercare that came with having to tell Rehtaeh's story and then care for myself. But I also felt like I was her voice now. So there's a lot of that. And at some point, I had to change the direction because I kind of started seeing, like, after a presentation, how do I feel? Like, do I feel exhausted? I have to do self-care, or do I feel inspired? So when I started speaking at like trauma conferences about the healing journey and what I did to kind of heal and take a different route, I felt more inspired. So I knew that I had to start talking in that realm and in the healing realm. And that was the only way I was going to be able to keep going. So I did kind of take after a few years, I took that direction, and that was a game changer for me.
Mm. Do you know what the moment of anger was for Rehtaeh and just the circumstances around her suicide?
The moment of anger?
Mm.
Yeah, so she had been having, like, and this is what I find a lot because I know a lot of people, a lot of parents, unfortunately, whose children that died by suicide. I've run some grief retreats and things, so I have talked to a lot of parents, and this is mostly true for a lot of people who lost someone to suicide. Rehtaeh was having a couple of really good weeks, and she was finally kind of she that day that she died, she was we had printed off her resume. She was going to go look for a part-time job. She's feeling a little more optimistic. She's going to take a break from school instead of keep trying to go to school and having these. A lot of them were girls coming at her, harassing her, calling her names, calling her a slut. And she was going to take a little bit of a break, look for some work, and take a break from school and then go back because she loved to learn, but she just wasn't able to. So that particular day, she had a boyfriend at the time. He came and got her, and they went out and doing the resumes. And I messaged her from the grocery store to see what she wanted at the store. Her girlfriend was staying with us at the time, so that was another kind of good thing for her because she kind of was a lot of fun. So she made Rehtaeh laugh a lot. So I was seeing like old parts of Rehtaeh those last couple weeks. But what happened that night I text her, and she said she was on her way home. This was at 10 o'clock. Said she was on her way home, her and her friend. They came in. I was downstairs. I went to bed earlier than I normally would, and I could hear her voice raising and getting louder. But that wasn't like uncommon in those 17 months because she was going through so many emotions. So I thought her and her friend had words and she was elevating her voice, and then I didn't hear anything. And her friend came down and said, Leah, you got to come upstairs. Rehtaeh locked herself in the bathroom and she won't let me in. But what happened is when they were out with a bunch of friends, Rehtaeh's boyfriend and her and a couple other guys and her friend, somebody said something really rude to Rehtaeh, and it was her boyfriend's friend. I don't know what the context was. I don't think it was around the image or anything from what her friend had told me. She said, but it was just something really hurtful. And her boyfriend did not stand up for her, did not like come forward. So that kind of was like that feeling of being negated. It kind of just kind of revved up all of this. So I guess when who she was yelling at was she was yelling at her boyfriend on the phone as she walked in the house, and she was really angry, and that was the last person she spoke to through the phone. So it wasn't about the argument, it wasn't about her boyfriend, it was about kind of being in a good space and then feeling all of that kind of rushing to the surface and not having enough time, enough good things happening from the time that that happened 17 months before, all the turbulence. So she just didn't have enough where she would see a big enough break to kind of say like, oh my gosh, remember that time, and then things got better. So I feel like at that time, like it just all came rushing through and she got so angry and she just like, screw it.
Mm-hmm.
And so her friend couldn't get in and came to get me. And then by the time I got up there, I got in and I saw what had happened, and then the ambulance, and it took her 3 days in the hospital to die.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really important that when somebody's struggling, that to watch them through the good time when it's good, because they're just in such a fragile, vulnerable state, especially as a young teenager being that traumatized. Everything is just so shaky and vulnerable.
Yeah. Did you get to speak to her in those 3 days?
She never came around. No.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
So if we go back to around 6 months later and you've got fibromyalgia, the heavy legs, how else did it present in your body?
I felt like I was bruised all over. So my intercostal muscles, um, they just felt like they were just so inflamed all the time. My joints, like on either side of my elbows, the back of my shoulders, my neck, uh, yeah, my legs. I couldn't get my legs to move to get up off the floor. Walking was a problem. Like I'd try to get my dogs out for a walk. It'd be 10 minutes, and I'd just be shooting pains down my legs. Um, and I just thought, great, now my body's turning against me too. And I was so angry. I was so angry at my body for like, how dare you do this right now?
Mm.
Um, and I laugh now because it's actually the opposite of that. But
Yeah.
at the time, I just was like, how dare you do this? Like, I just exhaustion and yeah.
Because you talked about being in the victim mode. So take us there. What was going through your mind? Like, how dare you, body, like do this to me? What else was happening?
How dare you do this to me? Like, how could this happen to me? Like, what kind, like, I deserve better than this, and like, I'm a good person. Why would this happen to me? Why me? Why my child? Yeah, so why me? Why my child? I can't live. I can't go on. I can't function. And then it's like I can't even be around people. They don't get me. They don't get this kind of pain. Nobody's going to understand this kind of pain. I just feel like so isolated and separate from everybody. Like I got this big stamp. Like people would come up to me because I was in the media. I could see my pain on everybody's face. And even though I of course feeling sorry for myself, I didn't want other people feeling sorry for me. Like I could see it on their face too, and I was like, oh, I don't want their pity.
Mm,
Like I'm every parent's worst nightmare, and I can see it. Like people would see me and they just start crying.
mm,
Like like, oh, she's the bereaved mom. She's the one that lost her child by suicide. Her daughter was raped. Like all of these, like nobody wants to think about those things because nobody wants to even go there with like that happens to other people's children. That- Right. So I was suddenly that face. And I didn't want and I had to wear sunglasses because the tears would I couldn't stop my tears. There was just no off switch. It was just constant and they just kept running and running and running. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'm crying,
mm,
and I just couldn't stop it. And I was like, wow, like this is the worst it can get. It can't get worse than this.
mm. But you just made a good point about how you could see the pain in everybody else's eyes and people often don't know what to say. So what would your suggestion be to someone who knows of someone in their community or their friend or even family where they feel this awkwardness? What would you suggest for them to do?
I would say, like, people actually came up and told me their stories of being raped and how they're going to get help they need because of Rehtaeh's story, because I spoke out. Like, it was just, it still happens. That still happens to this day. Uh, what would I say? I would say I'm just trying to think of all the different things that were said and done and what was actually helpful
Did
back
you
then. And
did you like people, did that make you feel good in what you were doing? When people said, hey, I've got this story and I'm going to go get help?
it did, and a lot of people told me that online and in person that I'm going to go get help because you came out and shared Rehtaeh's story. So I felt like, yeah, her life was giving other people's life meaning. So that did give meaning. And even back then, I felt really grateful that her story was shared so wildly because I know there's a lot of tragedy in the world that people don't hear about, that doesn't get
Mm,
the acknowledgement and attention that Rehtaeh's did. So I knew that right from the beginning. But there was one time, I'd say a few months in, I went to a store and the owner of the store said, I know who you are. Do you mind if I give you a hug? That was perfect.
mhm,
Didn't say anything else. He didn't like, for me, I know everybody's different, but for me, I just felt very validated without having to say anything. Because people are uncomfortable with your pain and they want you to make them feel better.
yeah, I've heard this a few times.
Yeah,
So do you
they
think
want
it's
you to break the yeah, and and you don't really have to say, and it's better to say not much because good intentioned people say the wrong things all the time. Like they tell you what you should do. You know what? You should go back to doing this. And you know what? This is going to give your life meaning. Or, just think of your other children. That's going to do it. Like, don't know. Like, that was one of the worst things somebody could say to me.
mhm,
Like, that just made me feel like you don't get it. So I felt like that was helpful. Sometimes people just left a note on my door or a card. I'm thinking of you, you know, or they would honor Rehtaeh somehow, make a donation to the local SPCA because she was a big animal advocate and a volunteer. So things like that were helpful, but for people giving you advice on what you should and shouldn't do, that's not good. Yeah.
yeah. Do you also think the guy that, or the shop owner who asked you, can I give you a hug? It's the asking for permission piece?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm,
Because even in the wake, like on the visitation, the people come, like hundreds of people coming up crying and hugging you and crying and hugging you. That's so tiring. Like you're holding everybody's, like you're all these emotions coming at you and you're hugging, and that's energy, and it was just really hard. But yeah, some people coming up and hugging you and then sobbing on you and like uncontrollable, like that is really hard to hold.
Yeah. And so, straight after all of this happened, did you have your emotional release in the tears, or did that take a while to come?
The tears started that night and they didn't stop for 3 years.
Hmm.
But the breakdown and release, like dropping to my knees and sobbing, and like that would just like randomly happen. It would just kind of be like something just kind of broke through me, and I would be all of a sudden on the kitchen floor sobbing. It was kind of like an outer body experience where it would just, the emotion would come in so strong, fast. I didn't even have time to catch it, and I would just be there sobbing and crying and thinking like, oh my gosh, like I can't even hold myself together at all.
What about your girls? How old were they at the time? And how did you work with that dynamic? Because I'm sure they were going through their stuff too.
Yeah, my girls were 4 and 9
Hmm.
when this happened. Uh, I remember just being really open with them. They weren't used to seeing me cry because I wasn't a crier. I was a person who kept it all together, who figured it out, who just figured out the family dynamics, that figured it all out and got it together. So they weren't used to seeing me cry and melt down. So I can remember my 4-year-old saying to me when we ran into someone in the store, she was holding my hand and she looked up at me because somebody was talking to me. She said, "Mommy, are you gonna cry?" 'Cause she could,
Feel
and
it.
I'm like, I'm not sure, hon." Uh, and then when she'd see me like that, I remember also saying, like, it's okay if mommy breaks down and cries. It's okay. We're going to be okay. I'm still going to read your story. I'm still going to be able to make you dinner. This is going to happen, but we're going to be okay. I remember specifically saying that to her, just so she knows that, it's not the same, but we're going to get through it and we're going to have as much normalcy as we possibly can.
Hmm. So you had something deeper inside of you when you were going through your discomfort in your body. What else got you through? And can you take us through what sort of therapies you did seek out? You mentioned Reiki. What else did you do?
So at that time, yoga, I say this all the time, yoga saved my life.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yoga saved my life. Uh, I started going to yoga for the peace that I had for like an hour afterwards. So when I started going to yoga, it was just like a really gentle class, and I could really tap into my body, something I hadn't done my whole life because of trauma, I had learned to disassociate from my body. So I could start kind of going in and going. It was in my sacrum really that I started really connecting. Anytime I landed my sacrum, it's still to this day when I land my sacrum, say it's a bridge pose, and I land my sacrum, it's like an intimate moment for me. I connect right there, and I thank it. And there's a lot of pain. I still have pain in that area. I thank it, and I just kind of tap into where it kind of relaxes when I do that. So for me, the yoga path brought me inward to kind of not just into my body, but started kind of looking at my thoughts a lot and noticing my thoughts. And I remember the yoga teacher saying once, you're not your thoughts and you're not your body. You're so much more than that. And I thought, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
Of course I'm my thoughts. That's who I am. Like, who else would I be? And so, but it just landed and it just kept germinating. Like, it was just in there, like, and it would just every few days it was like, I'm not my thoughts and my body. Wow, that's so deep. I can't even get there. I can't hold on to that. But it's kept sitting there. And so I think I went to yoga for probably a good at least a year before I did the yoga. Something again, that deeper, I started kind of listening to what I call the pings of my heart, because my life each day was so full of pain that I was looking for moments. So I would start looking for moments in the day. Could be a bird that just landed in front of me. It could be the way the roots looked in the ground. So I was looking for any moment that would bring me a sense of connection. And that's kind of how I followed it. And so the yoga, taking the yoga teacher training was like a deep one of those heart pings. Um, but even through my whole teacher training, I still was like the victim. Like I was still kind of very much in victim mode, but there was something else happening under the surface that um, I wasn't quite aware of yet. So it took time, but my mind, watching those spirals and kind of paying attention to finding the space between my thoughts and what I thought about my thoughts. So that space of being the observer is something that yoga taught me to do. And over time, it just kind of got deeper and deeper. Um, so yoga, watching my mind and watching my pain story, like that's what I call it. I'm watching that spiral like a record player and going, wow, right? And then learning that, you know what, that's a program, that's what's happening, but that's not who you are, Leah. So that actually, those kind of things that my yoga teacher told me started kind of taking root. And then
Mhm.
I started watering that and started allowing that to grow. So focusing more on those things than on, and the pain in my body took another, the fibromyalgia, like they wanted to put me in a fibromyalgia group, which I'm sure would have been fine, but there's something in me that said, you know what? I don't want to go in a group and talk about my pain. And that might not even have been what the group was about, but in my mind it was. So I'm like, I don't, and they kept sending me to psychiatrists who wanted me on medication. And I said, nope, there's another way, and I'm not going to do it that way. So the yoga I did, I started becoming more spiritual. So spiritual to me was connecting to that deeper knowing, connecting to nature, meditation, grounding my feet, noticing things that I didn't notice before. I did some training in like shamanic journeying. So it's like deeper meditation. I was trained in that, and I started doing a lot of that, and I was able to connect to Rehtaeh in those ways, in the shamanic ways. I So yeah, I guess I really stepped on a spiritual path. But to me, the spiritual path is kind of funny because um, the most important part of that was working with my mind.
Mm,
Yeah.
this is fascinating. Keep going.
And then, so the fibromyalgia, the pain, I was like, I'm so sick of this pain. So I started kind of reading up. I joined a fibromyalgia group on Facebook, and I realized, like, wow, like this looks so depressing. Everybody in this group is saying, like, is there anything positive? Is there anything? So I'm reading through threads and this following threads, and like, this is so depressing. There's got to be a different way. So I started reading, like, what is fibromyalgia exactly, and what will help it? Because everyone told me, oh no, you have this for life, and I'm like, no, but it actually showed up one day. So if it showed up one day, it can leave one day. Like doesn't have to be a life sentence here. And so I started looking at the types of foods that caused inflammation. And I'm like, oh, I love sugar. I'm like a sugar addict, and especially in grief, like sugar, and oh, I need the stories around like I'm grieving. So this is comforting. This ice cream is comforting. This is comforting. I just want to curl up and do nothing and eat my comfort food. So noticing when I started seeing like sugar, 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 like okay, Leah, if you're gonna live and you're going to reclaim your life again, you have to do it in all the ways. And you got to do it for yourself because you're worth it. So that started kind of saying, you know what? You are worth healing. You are worth living a life that you appreciate and love. So this is the next kind of step in this. So sugar, and when I say to people, oh, I had to give up refined sugar, oh, I could never do that because I love sugar. I'm like, I was the biggest sugar addict out there. So when I finished my 10-year drinking binge, there's so much sugar and alcohol. I went from that to actual sweets because my body was craving the sugar. And so I did it gradually and slowly. So I replaced my refined sugar a little bit at a time with dates, and I'd make some things with dates. And so I was still getting the sugar, but then I started putting protein with every meal to take away the sugar cravings. So I got rid of refined flours. I got rid of my pastas, the carbs, the white breads, I got rid of all of those things. And that's been 4 years of that. I don't get big pain in my body anymore. I still have pain, but nothing like that.
You notice a big shift with changing your diet?
Oh my gosh. It was huge. My energy levels all of a sudden became stabilized. I drank more water, and then my yoga practice, I started going to more invigorating yoga. I started I can walk now for an hour a day, no problem. And just little by little, I'm like, wow, the difference in my body is just amazing. And I know if I ate something, I'll get it right in my intercostal muscles. It'll flare, the pain will be very tender. So I know when it's food related. So, and then all of a sudden, my sleep, I need to have 8 hours sleep. And for years I did not get that. I didn't get the 8 hours sleep. So there's so many things so now to me, it's the mind, the body, the spirit. It all has to. And when I explain this to people, I say, I didn't do all those things at once. It was one piece, and then life showed me where I needed to go next. I didn't have to figure it all out. The next piece of the puzzle would come in. As long as I was doing the self-care became my number one priority. Self-care, and not the bubble baths and the pedicures, which are beautiful and nice, but the deeper work of loving myself through all those layers. And because of that, I let go of all kinds of pain. Things that happened to me in my childhood, that energy is just not there. I'm not bringing old energy into my present moment. I still get triggered, or I still get hurt about something. So I might still get triggered, but the actual energy of the experience isn't there. And if I do get triggered, which of course I do, I will say, oh, my body's feeling tight in this area. Oh, there's something happening inside of me. What's going on, Leah? I'll just have the dialogue right with me, what's happening? Oh, you're scared. What are you scared? Why are you afraid? Oh, this feels like that, but that's actually not happening right now. You're having a memory. Your body's having a memory. You're having a memory. Let's breathe. So I will talk to my way right through something, and I speak it right out loud a lot of times. I've pulled over the side of the highway, there's sirens coming, and I see images of Rehtaeh and this and that. And before, I wouldn't be able to catch it in time, and I'd be shaking and afraid, and oh my gosh, I'm in danger and this horrible thing. But I'd be able to, now I'm able to go, okay, there's a siren and it's triggering a feeling, and there's an image that's going to come through. There's the image. So getting a hold of my nervous system ahead of time is something that is really important to me. So I will, instead of, all of a sudden we're edgy and we don't know why, and then we're kind of snippy with our kids or our coworkers or our spouse, and it's already, because we didn't catch it in time, it's kind of just building up, and then it's and you just kind of spill out. But
Yeah.
if you can go, ooh, oh wow, like I'm really getting fired up in there. Like, whoa, I think I
Yeah.
need to step back.
And that takes time, doesn't it? And that's
Oh,
the it's
yeah,
the observation piece that you talk about, is that it's so nice when you can just look at it with curiosity rather than resistance, frustration, or hate, and
yeah,
then just go, what is it here to tell me? And it is just catching it earlier and earlier. I love it.
yeah. And exactly what you just said too. Instead of saying like, why did this happen to me? Why, why me? And this isn't fair, which that's all true. It's all true that none of this is fair and it's not right. And of course, my daughter should be here living her life. I did have to start saying, what is this here to teach me? What am I supposed to learn from this? Where do I go from here? Instead of, this shouldn't happen to me and resist, resist, resist. It's like, okay, but it did. This is where I sit. This is where I am. What can I do from the place where I sit? What can I do from here? And then go, okay, right? Because the other thing is just, you're just spiraling in that negative, sad energy. And it's okay to be sad now and then. Like I still get sad. I still have days where it comes up, but I don't go down the rabbit hole with it. I don't stay there. I can allow it to come and be like, of course you're sad.
Yeah.
I talk to myself, of course you're sad. Why wouldn't you be sad?
Yeah.
It's okay to be sad. We're just not going to, this is where we are. And this is the life I'm choosing now. And I guess at some point, I say this a lot now, at some point, my transcendence had to equal the pain of my my child dying. Like it had to, and I don't even say loss. I don't like the word loss either. It's an experience I had, but I don't feel like I don't see it as a loss. I see it as an experience.
Yeah.
And at some point, I realized, I guess, as I was kind of going along and shocking and surprising myself of how, because none of that was my goal, like to bring all these pieces and kind of keep going and keep going and keep going. But at some point I was like, you know what, yeah, I am going to transcend so much that it's going to equal the pain of not having her. Like
Mm.
it has to. So I decided, like, at some point it actually has to, for it to have the meaning behind it.
Yeah. I like how you said that you did speak out loud. That's a big piece of what I do with people. It's like, just not necessarily think about it in your head or journal it. When you speak it out loud, it just sounds so
Mm.
different. And this is where you can take responsibility for how you're feeling, acknowledge how you're feeling, and just hear it, like to hear yourself.
Yes.
And I think there's this point of like, when is this going to be over? Do I keep going? And then all of a sudden it just switches and you look back on it and go, how did I do that? How did I
Yeah.
just switch over? It's like, I often think
When
of,
did that even yeah, when did that, it's kind of like in a yoga pose, like, geez, when did my foot go from like down there in the tree
yeah,
pose to up to my inner thigh? Like, when did that even happen? I don't even know. I
yeah.
just saw it in a picture one day. It's like, oh, look, my leg's up. Yeah.
Yes. I always remember being a kid going, oh, I can't wait until I'm older and I get to do this. And then all of a sudden you get to do it. And sometimes catching yourself when you get to do the thing and then you desire something else. But
Yeah.
it's like, when does that turning point happen? When do you stop getting excited about birthdays
Yeah,
and
exactly.
want to stop getting older? Or yeah, that switch point, I don't know what it's
Yeah.
called, but yeah, meeting the pain of your experience to be able to
Mm.
transcend. That's a really great way of saying that.
Yeah.
Was it just all learning through your yoga, or did you receive guidance by other people? Because the way you speak about it sounds like you just really listen to your inner voice.
Yeah, I call it kind of soul excavation. I got real curious about what was going on. I got so curious about myself in my inner world. And that self-care became such a huge kind of part of it, that I just knew, like, I was unlayering, 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 and that, yeah, there was kind of, I'm trying to think if I did other things. So I did my soul retrieval work, my soul journeying. I did work with an osteopath too. I remember her speaking directly to my heart, saying, "Why won't you move? You're just a muscle. Come on, give me some movement." Like, she was trying to get it to move. It was so tight. It was, and I could feel it. It was so tight. Like, this felt like, oh, so crunched in. And my diaphragm, she had to work on my diet because I couldn't breathe. I didn't know I wasn't breathing properly. But I remember her speaking to my heart. And at that time, I wasn't speaking to my body that way. So I was like,
Mm.
wow, it's like she's actually speaking to my heart.
Yeah, it's fascinating because we have some new osteopaths that have come into our clinic and they're very visceral oriented. So working with the organs, and yeah, they talk so much about how our organs should move and be slippery and
Yeah.
not stuck. And oh, I love that she spoke to it and you didn't know what was going on, but you've got a new
Yeah.
understanding about it. And you can say now, yeah, I do remember that it just wasn't moving. It felt stuck.
Yeah. I felt like there was something solid in the way, that it was just like something solid right there. So yeah, when she was talking to her, I'm like, oh, I do feel something solid there, but she's actually speaking right to my heart.
Do you know what it
Yeah.
is that was keeping it so stuck on reflection?
Um, yeah, I guess it was just I was trying to protect it. It was a block there. I think it was just constricted
Mm.
from trying to protect it because it was, yeah, scared.
How have you got
Yeah.
it moving now? How did you set your heart free? Have you?
Oh, yes, yes, I certainly have. Yeah, I don't feel the need to have it like this. I love heart openers, any heart openers. Um, I even remember feeling that, years ago too, feeling like I felt like oh, I even had yoga therapy too. I had some yoga therapy where we dialogued with parts of my body. And at that time, she actually said, like, "Oh, is there something tight?" I said, "Yeah, it feels like a heavy wooden cross that's right there, cross." And she said, "Can you tap into any lightness in your body?" And I could find some lightness. And she said, "Do you think that," because I was in a few different poses, "do you think that the heaviness and the lightness could speak to each other?" And it was interesting because it was almost like a meditative state. I said, yes, they can, but they had to come outside of my body to do it. So the heavy, like, cross and this light energy were having a dialogue with each other.
Did you speak it out loud?
Yes. And they were, yes, and they were having this, and this heavy cross, wooden cross, was like, you got to protect your heart and you got to be careful, because this other part was like, let's just be loving and kind, and the one part was like, you know what's gonna happen to you if you're so light and loving? You're gonna be eaten up. Like, this was and then we were able to bring those two together and bring them right into the third eye, right back into my body.
Oh, I love
So
it.
that was a
Verbal
that was a
dialogue.
that was a neat, really neat kind of thing that happened. I'm very visual, so like that happened pretty fast.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that experience that happened. And I'm trying to think. I did have therapy, but like the
How did
talk
you find
therapy,
the conventional therapy?
yeah, the talk there, and I have a master's degree in counseling. So I used to do addictions counseling. For me, that because I had a master's degree in counseling, that kept me stuck. I feel like it kept me stuck because you
Can
can't go
I
from
ask,
the
did
mind.
you go into addictions counseling because of your alcohol experience?
Um, no, it
You were
just,
just frustrated by it?
I just found it really I always want to help the people that need help the most, and I felt like that was an area, and it was at that point. Right now, I could probably do it better, but at that time, I wasn't in the same space. It was really draining for me.
Yeah.
Which now, when I counsel people, I don't feel it's my responsibility
Rescue them.
to make them, so it's a completely different energy. But
Mm. Well, tell me a little bit more about how you feel like the masters in counseling actually kept you restricted.
well, the way I say, well, because anytime you're going from the mind to the mind to figure things out, you're going from a mindset to the same mindset to figure it out. Like you're stuck in you're going from the same place, cycling around. And I don't feel like healing happens there. I feel like the only thing that it's good because you have to get things out. So talk therapy is good, especially for shame. Like in order for shame to dissipate, you actually have to get it out here and it loses its power. So talking does help, but I feel like talking only helps for understanding, for getting it out, for not having things stuck in your body and but in order to truly heal anything, I think trauma lives in our nervous system, trauma lives in our body. And if we don't drop from our head into our heart and into our body, we're only going to heal surface level stuff. And I
Mm.
think that that's what I did in my life was healing things surface level, like, oh, I understand why I'm like that now. And now what?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know how to drop into my body, or I didn't know how to work. Nobody even told me that you need to work with your nervous system. You need to work with how you operate in there. So I didn't know that. So I really never healed things except from an intellectual level. And I don't feel like you can really get there from there.
Absolutely. And I think some people might be listening to this going, oh, I'm still trying to understand it. And how did you do it? I think the key is just like explore, try things, no matter how crazy they are, but as long as they feel safe and they feel right to you. And
Yeah.
sometimes, what was the thing that your yoga teacher was saying to you that didn't quite make sense? And now it does.
You're not your mind and your body. You're much bigger than that.
Yeah, and just keeping your mind open to like, okay, I don't really know what this means yet, but
Yeah.
it will drop in at the right time and just trust in this.
Yeah. And planting seed, like this is the other thing I did. I don't know when. I decided I was going to heal, and I had no idea what that meant. But I put things around my house that reminded me of healing. Like I found a watercolor, and it was a beautiful watercolor, and it said healing. I'm like, that's going in my kitchen. Healing. And so it was like an affirmation. I feel like affirmations are really strong if you take action towards the affirmation. So I am healing is an active affirmation. And then I was looking for ways to heal. So aligned action towards your affirmation. And so I would take a word. Like I know I work with the word, I still do. I work with the word expectation for the longest time
Mm,
because I get so disappointed by this or that, and that person should be there for me. And why didn't they show up? And then where was this person when I was in court? And I'm like, okay, Leah, what were you expecting here? Oh, oh, I was expecting this and this and this. Is that what you wanted? And then I realized half the time, no, I actually didn't even want that. Like, oh, so I would take a word and start working with it, and then start like and then I would work with the projections, and I still do all the time. Like that person is so mean and doing this and doing that, and I would say, well, how am I being mean to myself in this situation? Like, how are you being mean that this is bothering you so much? And then I would find it. I'm like, oh, look at there it is. I'm
yeah.
being mean to me. I'm having these expectations of me. I'm like thinking that I need to do this and this. That's not kind.
Mm,
Remember kindness? So those are yeah, so kindness with my thoughts. Kindness was a word too for a while. And I remember like, well, kindness means this, and kindness means napping, and kindness. And then one day it's like, well, are you being kind to your thoughts? Are your thoughts kind? And then I would see like guilt. And what if I would have done this? And I'm like, oh, that's not kind. That's not a kind thought. So then I came to a point where I'd invite those emotions in. It's like, you know what, guilt, you want to be with me today? Let's do it. Let's
Mm.
let's play guilty all day. You should have done this, and if you were a better mom, you would have done that, and this would have happened, and that would have happened, and it's like, okay, but none of that stuff is actually true. So I'd watch it kind of go and go, yeah, you can hang out with me. You can come in and visit and we can do this, but then you're leaving. You're not living in my body. So I
Because
actually,
you're,
again, have that conversation with guilt.
yeah, because you're very visual. Does guilt look like something for you? Does it take
Yeah,
on
guilt
a
was really, yeah, kind of
form?
like a really ugly, kind of mean, like the meanest voice, the meanest part of me that would kind of be like, that stern, like teacher, like how did you should do this and you should have done that. That kind of mean,
Did it take on a
yeah.
form like that you could visually look at?
No, more, not really a form, but just more of that voice, that kind
Yeah.
of what I call trash talking me.
Yeah, like the cross and the
Yeah,
light. I
yeah,
like how your voice
yeah,
changed when you were having those conversations.
yeah. It's like, okay, you can come in, we can do this, but you're not staying here. You're a visitor.
Mm.
You can come and then you're not staying. So
Have
I
you
did do
noticed,
that with
sorry,
emotion.
have you noticed over time that feelings of guilt and sadness, they still happen, but not so frequently?
Oh, not even close. Yeah. There's just little snippets here and there, but not sadness still comes. But again, I greet my sadness like I'm so kind to the sadness. Like I'm like this loving mother to my sadness.
Mm.
And so the sadness feels so validated and it doesn't have to come from other people. I do that.
What sort of voice does your sadness take on?
I'd say the sadness is, it's really heavy. It's really like, I just miss my child. Because I remember the doctor saying to me like a couple years in, like, what are you struggling with? I'm like, what am I struggling with? Like, what part are you like? She wanted to know, are you in the angry stage? Are you in this stage? What stage of grief? Like, what are you struggling with? And I remember looking at her and going, my child is dead. I miss my child. I'm struggling with that. And then she didn't say anything. It was just like there's no stage here that so the sadness is a very like it's like a familiar friend almost. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about movement? I guess that's the yoga, but you said that nutrition, movement, lifestyle. What are the
Yeah, I
what
walk.
are the things that cover you?
I do a lot of mindful walking in my day to day, just getting out of bed. I check in with myself before I even hit my feet hit the floor. I always check in. I put my hand on my heart because that's how I do it. Um, how you doing? First thing as soon as I wake up, how you doing? I check in with myself before my feet hit the ground, and then I bring my awareness to my feet as they connect. Um, just awareness of everything, really. So I guess that would be mindfulness,
Mhm.
being aware of my body, how it moves and how it feels and smells and nature is very important to me. And now I'd say in the last 6 months, I'm actually doing like strength training now and just adding on to things because my body's a little bit like, I didn't want to like baby my body. Wanted to honor what she could do and what she couldn't do, but also be like, well, maybe we could try something new. Like maybe we can actually has always like being a little bit timid of what's too much. I don't want to be flare up, like in fibromyalgia, finding that balance and feeling like I found the balance, and then wanting to kind of challenge my body a little bit. Like, wonder if I could do some strength training. Maybe I can add that into it. And feeling a little bit at first like, oh, I don't know, you don't want to push yourself. And saying like, let's just try to push yourself a little bit. So I've kind of playing with that now.
Mhm.
And being like, yeah, you can do hard things. And so even when I'm in a class and it's a strength training class and it gets hard and my body wants to say, you know what, no, don't do it. Don't do this. It's like, you know what, Leah, you can do hard things. You've done hard things. Just try it out a few minutes. So kind of like doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's yeah, so that's been helpful too.
Is there anything else that you want to share about your journey?
Probably that the smallest things that we do every day I are the things that make the biggest impact. We don't need to know, like, I feel like I know for me, even in the past, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get from I'm only at A and that's C. I don't know how I'm going to get there. So it's just like, I just want to stay in my safe bubble, like, because that seems like too much work. But every day, just a few little things just leads to like huge changes. So I just want to emphasize that it's the little things that we do every day in the moments in that decision that makes the greatest impact. Like before I gave up sugar, I just started drinking more water and see how that made me feel. So just those little things and like just stacking the successes. And at the end of the day, going like, you know what you did today? Like you did these things and making it like the little things became a big deal. It's like you actually did this, this, and this today. That's awesome. Instead of where I used to like would have beat myself up about, yeah, but you know what? Your list was 20 things long and you only got 5 things done. Like that's not really good. You're not very productive, right? Whatever
Yeah.
that is like. So learning not to beat myself up, learning to have a different dialogue, a different relationship, like those things just change your life.
Mm. Now, although this would probably be a good place to end, I would love to know, how is it that you work now? What do you do professionally? And how have
So
you brought all of this into it?
yeah, so that's really exciting because I teach an online program, Soul Speak, and in that program, I teach people all the things that I did to get me from where I was to where I am. So I do definitely walk my talk, and I have broken it down into modules of how do you do that, like piece by piece by piece. So I love teaching that. So I do that. Before COVID, I was a keynote speaker. I did a lot of speaking. So of course I'm not traveling and doing that now. So I do one-on-one sessions with people. I do spiritual sessions and do some counseling sessions. And I work a lot with pain stories. I want to know what somebody's pain story is. I want to know what's spiraling up there, and then being able to kind of shift that and drop into breath and movement and meditation. And so that's pretty much what I do now is run online programs and do one-on-ones.
And do you work with a particular type of person? Is it people who have gone
Trauma.
through a grief experience, any trauma?
I attract people that have trauma, yeah. And I think that that's pretty common that we
Mhm.
attract what we've gone through. Not necessarily like I've run grief retreats too for bereaved parents. I've done that, which is really rewarding too. But I just see if it's a good match. And usually people that come to me well, we've all had trauma. Everybody's had trauma. But people that come to me usually have had a significant amount of trauma and have been in counseling and have tried traditional ways, That seems to be like a common theme. Tried the things and got so far and would just need to get over that next kind of breakthrough. And I can relate to that because I've been there and
Mm,
I know what that feels like, wanting to heal, trying all the things and just not being able to get past that last little hump that's gonna break you like, oh wow, there's a whole nother realm on the other side of this.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Do you believe that this is where the spiritual aspect and the energetics comes into play?
yes, yeah. That's exactly um that's exactly where it comes into play is that whatever spirituality means to the person, like to know that there's something deeper that's kind of driving you, that we all have this kind of one life with purpose and passion. And of course, purpose changes all the time, not this one big purpose, but it's this energy that's always evolving and changing. To know that the essence of who we are is pure love and light, and there's a guidance system in there that can
Yeah.
guide us to where we need to go. So I do feel like that's really important.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Leah. It was really fascinating, as many of the pain stories that are on here. And I love that you were
Yeah.
doing very similar work with people and using your experience and the shifts that you've had to help these people.
Thank you. It's nice to connect with you.